A very good afternoon. Before I kick off, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the organisers of this year's Google Zeitgeist for inviting me along to talk about one of my great passions, what inspires me, and hopefully it will inspire you too. There's been some amazing and thought-provoking presentations so far today. I'm certain all Americans get enrolled in stage school from birth, and being British, that's not quite how we do things, but we'll do my best to keep you engaged. I oversee the archival division of Getty Images, who are the global leader in visual communications. And in December, as Soledad alluded to, I celebrate 30 years at what we endearingly call the Carleton. So I started when I was 7, obviously. So you can certainly say that photography and history are very much part of my DNA. As we shall see and hear, the past can often inspire the future, and with it, that next giant leap. So understanding and being curious about our past is what will make our future a better place. So ABC is my own personal mantra, always be curious, and that would be something I'd love to instill in you as well. The overall theme of my presentation this afternoon is how a series of photographs shot over 150 years ago had the power to make an emotive impact on a president and affect legislation to protect our environment. But before I do, a little bit of background about the Carleton, as I like to call it. So, as the slide states, the archive is 160 years in the making, so we can trace our roots right back to the birth of the photographic industry with the founding of London Stereoscopic Company in 1854 by George Swan Nottage, with over 80 million images spread across some 1,500 different collections. The Carleton is one of the great cultural institutions of the world. And with less than 1% of it digitized, it's certainly an Aladdin's cave of treasures. It's often just a case of finding those hidden gems, but rest assured there is gold in them, the hills. And we have an ongoing editing program to unearth and digitize imagery that will educate, inform, entertain, and hopefully inspire, and obviously sell by the bucketful as well. After all, we're not a museum, we are a commercial organization. Having said that, we're much more than just a repository of old stuff. We like to keep the old crafts and traditional methods going. So this is just a few shots in our archive. So we have everything from etchings, engravings, woodcuts, maps, cartoons, playbills, patent application forms, etc., as well as photography. But it's the old crafts that are quite well established in our particular archive. So we still have a traditional black and white darkroom. We still do hand retouching of prints, and we even do old school drum scanning. This is our vintage room. So we have an amazing array of vintage photography. That's an image you probably recognize, which is the VJ Day Kiss. But we have photography from all the great and the good in photographic history. Cartier-Bresson is a good example. And as I alluded to, are very old people in our darkroom. And even older people retouching prints. And a slightly younger person drum scanning. But we also do work in the modern age. So we do a lot of restoration projects in order to conserve and preserve our cultural past. The image that's being restored here is of legendary bluesman Robert Johnson, and is one of only 3 images in existence that we know of the great man. I think the key aspects of what we do is to ensure accessibility. So anyone, anywhere with access to a computer can view our imagery and in turn view their own visual heritage. But to move on, photography is without question an international language, transcending language barriers. And in this internet age, especially with the rise of social media, images are more powerful as a communication tool than ever before. Imagery is being used increasingly to make a point on any number of global issues and effectively tell the story, often in a single frame. We're constantly being bombarded with images that may or may not prick our collective conscience, be it war, famine, pollution, global warming, or indeed our disappearing flora and fauna. However, when a particular issue is covered in our media, the type of images used tend to be provocative, unsettling, or harrowing to make a point. So you might recognize this. This is the, obviously, Oklahoma hurricanes. This amazing picture is aftermath of the tsunami in Japan. Our disappearing polar ice caps. Pollution, obviously. This is in Rio. This is a result of the BP oil spill. And probably something that really, really hit home with me. This was a story shot by a photographer called Brent Sturton, who actually won World Press Photo for this. And this was the death of, the murder, really, of a troop of silverback gorillas in the Congo, which actually caused global outrage. But as I say, it's a good example of a thought-provoking image and a harrowing image to make a point. But imagery doesn't necessarily have to be shocking to be thought-provoking. And to demonstrate this point, the imagery of one man combined with the vision of another led directly to a change in how we viewed our natural world, and in turn preserve a unique ecological region of North America, so for the enjoyment of future generations. And bear in mind that this is the only place in the world that giant redwoods grow. So these amazing trees, together with the sequoias and Maripisa Grove and everything that Yosemite entails, might have been logged many, many years ago. So this is the only known shot of Carleton Watkins. He was originally an East Coaster. He was lured to the West Coast with the promise of fame and fortune because of the gold rush in the 1840s. But he soon learned otherwise, along with various other deluded souls. He entered the world of photography more by chance than design, originally as a sort of front-of-house man, like a barker, to get people into this particular studio. But it so happened that when his boss was away, he'd start to sort of self-taught himself to do or to create daguerreotypes. He was so good at this, he soon went on to different types of photography and got more and more ambitious. So with his patron, he traveled out to Yosemite, but he soon realized, this is in the late 1850s, but he soon realized that he needed a special camera to capture not only the breathtaking beauty of the region, but also the sheer scale and enormity of Yosemite. So he invented what he called his mammoth plate camera, which was this huge, great contraption. This is 3 foot by 3 foot. So you with your iPhones or digital cameras, his camera was 3 foot by 3 foot with a lens like this big. So in 1861, he traveled to Yosemite and he started to shoot a series of plates. This is a very famous tree that is still there. And we have to thank Carleton Watkins for that, and I'll come back to the reason why. So the sap's still running down the inside of that tree because I have been there. That's basically his mobile darkroom. You can just about make out his box of plates. And remember, Yosemite then, the nearest road was about 80 miles away, so he was using dirt tracks and precipitous mountain passes. So you really suffered for your art in those days. This, I think, is one of my favourite images from his series of pictures showing the Half Dome and El Capitan. Now, you probably can't see, or it's very difficult to make out, in the top right, there is a little tiny figure on a ledge. And if I zoom into that, it's a little man. And the thing that makes me laugh is that Carleton Watkins actually asked him to get up the Half Dome, not El Capitan, so he's gone up completely the wrong mountain, but probably not. But actually, he's not there. Carleton Watkins used to actually paint him onto the negative to give it a sense of scale. So although it looks like a little man, it's not a little man. So he shot these 31 plates. He came back to San Francisco. He produced a number of lavish albums. And remember, he was using what we call a wet plate process. So he was actually creating the images in Yosemite amongst the dust, the heat, the humidity, and literally making the prints there in situ. So he brought these prints back to his studio in San Francisco. He produced this lavish album. It had, gold hinges and ebony and ivory and all sorts of ridiculous things. So it was far too expensive for anyone to afford. And it actually sums up a lot of photographers from the time. They might have been great photographers, great scientists, chemists, etc., but they were rubbish businessmen. They were really poor businessmen. And he actually, Carleton Watkins actually went bankrupt about 6 times during his life, and he was actually reduced to living in a disused boxcar in San Francisco with his wife and family at one stage. So having said that, he did get a stroke of luck. One of his albums was actually bought by a guy called John Conis. Now, John Conis was a senator based in Washington, and he took his album to show Abraham Lincoln, who he knew liked photography, had an interest in photography. And this was really the tipping point, because Lincoln was completely, utterly blown away by the beauty of this region through these photographs. And this spurred Lincoln into action. He passed what was called the Yosemite Grant in 1864, which basically banned any commercial development in this area. So it effectively paved the way for the national park systems. Technically, Yellowstone gets the accolade as the first national park, but really Yosemite, because of the Yosemite Grant, was the forerunner and, in my view, the real McCoy. And I think the other thing that's fairly amazing about this was that, bear in mind, Lincoln was fighting a civil war at the time. He was trying to abolish slavery. He was trying to get re-elected, but he still found time to pass the Yosemite Grant, which gives you an indication how important he regarded this region. So, sadly, Carleton ended his days in poverty and obscurity, much like every great artist, it seems. And the tipping point on final ignominy was the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. So he lost all his plates, all completely destroyed. And the only things that survived was the stuff that he'd sold during his lifetime, which wasn't that much. And a friend of his was actually cataloguing some of his prints. But this earthquake not only caused him to lose his plates, it also caused him to lose his marbles as well. And it had the effect of actually turning him slightly mad. And he was actually put in Napa State Hospital for the insane, where he passed away several years later, completely forgotten and buried in an unmarked grave on the hospital grounds. Even his wife and children disowned him because of his embarrassing mental state. So it's a very sad end. But like every great artist, they are rediscovered at a certain point. And he was rediscovered in the 1970s. So a lot is made about Ansel Adams' work, but this guy is really the founding father. And he is regarded now as the founding father of environmental photography, which means you can take a shot like this, which is actually this. And I took that. And I'm not a photographer. I'm actually a musician, in mother, but that's beside the point. But the thing is, it's almost impossible to take a bad picture in Yosemite. And we have actually, the genius of Carleton Watkins and the vision of Abraham Lincoln to thank the fact that we can stand there and take the same shot. So it's really the craft and technical brilliance of one man combined with the vision of another in order to make that next giant leap. And Lincoln thinking not just 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, but thinking 100 years hence. Remember when he passed this grant in 1864, no one gave a two hoots about the environment, but Lincoln did in terms of making it secure for future generations. So what is hard to convey, even in an impressive and high-tech environment like we have here is the sheer beauty and magnificence of the actual original plates which we hold in London. So, as a parting gesture, anyone here who happens to be in dear old London town at any point in the future has my open invitation to come and see the plates and decide for yourself. So, thank you.